Today on Jonathan Bird's Blue World, Jonathan helps archaeologists excavate Blackbeard the Pirate's Shipwreck.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Bird, and welcome to my world.
I be Blackbeard the Pirate, and welcome to me barge?
How I ended up a pirate on a barge is an interesting story. It all started back in 1717 when Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard the Pirate, was roaming the Atlantic from Africa to the Caribbean, plundering ships as he went. Although reported by his crew to be a fair and decent man, Blackbeard had a fierce reputation, partly due to his clever use of lit fuses in his hat to intimidate his enemies. Off the island of St. Vincent, Blackbeard and his crew captured a French merchant vessel and quickly converted it to a pirate ship with 40 cannons, renaming her the Queen Anne's Revenge. She was Blackbeard's flagship in a growing armada of captured ships. But in 1718, Blackbeard ran the Queen Anne's Revenge aground on a sandbar outside Beaufort, North Carolina. Experts believe the grounding was intentional, the pirate version of corporate downsizing. He stranded many of his crew and fled in a smaller ship. Later that year, Blackbeard was killed in a battle with British forces not far away at Ocracoke Island. The Queen Anne's Revenge was lost for hundreds of years until being discovered in 1996. The shipwreck is now an active underwater archaeological site administered by the North Carolina Department of Cultural Resources. And that's where I come into the story. It's early morning in Beaufort, North Carolina, and I'm getting on a barge with a team of archaeologists. But not just any archaeologists. These are underwater archaeologists who are excavating the wreck of Queen Anne's Revenge. My good friend Rick Allen is in charge of all cinematography that takes place on the site, and today he'll be my underwater cameraman. Everyone sets up their gear, and it's time to shove off for pirate adventures on the high seas. As we head out under drawbridges, making our way from the inlet to the open ocean, Wendy Welsh, the project director, prepares for the day's work. It's going to be a long day as the weather has been bad and the team has lost a lot of time this week. So we have a lot of scuba tanks. Wendy talks with nautical archaeologist David Moore, whose research originally helped pinpoint the location of the wreck.
If you can get it, Rick, take it up.
Soon we arrive at the wreck site, and the barge is anchored directly above it.
All right, it's been a while since we've been out here, so we got some work to do today, so I hope you guys are ready to go. The way we left the site was we have both of our big dredges that are laying on 70 stake, which is what our double boobies are, and then we have our frames that are on the pile. What I want to do first is get two divers in, kind of do a site assessment, see what's going on.
The first team suits up to check on the wreck and the visibility. The water is not known for clarity here in this shallow, sandy area.
The archaeological team needs to be able to talk to each other underwater so they can get things done. So they're all wearing these full-face masks, which have communications gear in them. You can talk by pushing this button, and you can hear what other people are saying through this little earpiece. So I'm going to be wearing one too, and I'll be able to talk to everybody and hear what they're saying.
We get in.
Yep.
Go to the bottom.
Yep.
Get comfortable. We'll follow the hoses down.
Rick and I have a quick discussion about our dive plan, and then it's time to see this wreck for myself.
Yeah, baby. Woo! You ready?
Jonathan, this is topside for a comm check.
I hear you loud and clear.
Copy that. Thank you, Jonathan.
The visibility on the bottom is terrible. I can barely see 4 feet. It's hard to describe how difficult it is to work in such bad conditions. Eventually, I find my way to one of the only landmarks on the wreck.
This is the North Anchor, the largest anchor on Blackbeard's ship. It's about 13 feet long. That's as big as a car.
Soon, the crew fires up the pumps on what is essentially a big vacuum cleaner called a dredge. Down on the bottom, this equipment is used to clear sections of the wreck by vacuuming up the sand that continually accumulates. I'm using the vacuum to clear an area around an object, but I have no idea what the object is.
What is this?
I'm not sure. It might be part of a cannon.
To me, everything we uncover looks like a rock, but to an expert, these concretions, as they're called, are treasure. While most of the wood on a shipwreck is consumed by the sea, metal, glass, and ceramics often survive. But hundreds of years of marine growth like barnacles and oysters add layer after layer of concretions on the artifacts. It takes an expert eye to identify artifacts in these rock-like concretions. Up on deck, the water and sand from the dredge go through a sluice where larger objects are sieved out and heavier particles settle out. There's all kinds of good stuff in here that we'll go through later. Down on the bottom, I know we're digging out something big.
What are we digging out here? Is this a cannon?
This is an anchor. There should be a cannon right next to it, a little deeper buried down.
Wendy has joined us in the water and enlists my help to take some electrical readings. The cannons, which are made of iron, produce a tiny electrical current as they corrode. Wendy wants to measure the voltage they're producing as a way of learning how fast the corrosion is taking place and which cannons should be excavated first. Our first step is to gently drill a hole through the marine growth on a cannon to reach the metal. Then I apply an electrode.
All right, Jonathan is holding the electrode. You can start the 2 minutes and let him know when it is complete. Copy that, Wendy. Start 2 minutes now.
Okay, start the reading on the concretion for C7.
I have to hold the probe on the cannon for 2 minutes to allow the reading to stabilize. Then they record the reading up on the barge. After doing that for an hour, I feel like a real archaeologist. I'm a regular underwater Indiana Jones. But soon my tank is getting low and it's time to go back to the surface.
Wow! What'd you think of that? Man, you know, normally I'm not a fan of vacuuming, but vacuuming a cannon out of a shipwreck is really fun. Isn't that neat? Yeah, I got a lot of sand in my gloves. That was great.
After a long day at sea, we finally turn and head back to the dock. But my work is far from done. My next stop is the Queen Anne's Revenge Field Lab, where archaeologist Lisa Briggs is panning for treasure.
Hi, Lisa.
Hey, Jonathan, welcome.
Thank you.
Come on in. This is our field lab. This is where we're doing the micro artifact extraction.
At the field lab, Lisa's looking through all that sand and sediment we collected in the sloughs for micro artifacts.
We find all sorts of tiny little artifacts that would be overlooked if we were to look on site or underwater. It's really difficult to identify things perfectly underwater. We've got low visibility, we've got lots of currents, lots of stuff going on when we're actually underwater. So we save all the sediment, we bring it back here, and then we process it to try and find the tiny little cool bits of treasure that we missed when we're actually physically digging underwater.
The most common micro artifact on the wreck is lead shot, tiny lead balls that would have been ammunition for muskets.
Some of the shot that we find was actually used in handheld muskets and smaller handheld firearms. And then some other shot that we're finding, even the very small pieces, grape shot or seed shot, would have been used in bags inside of cannons, and that was used mostly to try to take out the rigging of an enemy's ship.
Lisa gives me a lesson in panning through the sand to separate the heavier lead from the lighter sand and rocks. It's a very similar technique to panning for gold.
You know, if it doesn't work out as an underwater archaeologist, I can go gold prospecting after working on this site.
We're gonna find you in Alaska next year.
Oh yeah. I actually pick up the lip a little bit.
Like something like that. I'm gonna starve if I have to feed myself with finding gold this way.
Finally, after I get the technique down, I find something.
I don't know. Oh, I think I see something.
There be lead in this pan. Look at that.
We have found in total, I think, over 250,000 pieces of lead shot.
Now, you might not think of lead shot as treasure, but for a pirate, ammunition is critical. And to an archaeologist, this stuff is like gold. I spend hours sifting through the sand for micro artifacts, and I've become pretty good at panning for lead shot. But now it's time for my next stop.
Let's get out of here before she makes us do any more.
Not far from the field lab, tucked away in a warehouse, is the Queen Anne's Revenge Restoration Lab. I meet up with project director Wendy Welsh for a tour.
Hey, Jonathan, welcome to the lab.
Wendy, how are you?
Hey, nice to have you.
Inside are tons of artifacts that have been rescued from the shipwreck, all awaiting restoration so they can be put on display.
This is the North Carolina Department of Cultural Resources Queen Anne's Revenge Conservation Lab. And what we do here is we take in all the artifacts that come in from the QAR shipwreck, put them in storage, we conserve them and make them ready for public display, and everything in between.
Show me how you do that.
All right, so we've been out to the site and you've seen kind of what it looks like. You've seen a site map, and so the way these things come up are in large amorphous lumps called concretions. And what we do here immediately is, of course, store them in wet storage.
All of the artifacts are stored in tanks filled with water. They're being treated with special chemicals and an electric current to drive the salt molecules out of the metal. Without this process, these ancient artifacts would crumble into dust when they left the water. Everything from the tiniest brass fitting to the largest iron cannon has to be slowly, painstakingly treated with this process. And for a large object like a cannon, the process can take years.
So let me ask you, just out of curiosity, if you took a cannon out of the water,
All right.
and you didn't do anything. You just was like, hey, check it out, we found a cannon, and you brought it out and you maybe cleaned off all the marine growth and just put it in the museum, what would happen?
Well, it looked pretty cool for like the first 2 days. And then the first few days after that, it will start to rust. And then those salts that have been permeating that iron for many, many years is going to start to crystallize, right, as it dries out. And once that happens, it'll start popping off surfaces. And then you pop off your surfaces and you have no more nice, pretty cannon anymore. So that's why we have to do our process that we do. And it does take a good while, but it's actually a payoff in the end. If you think about it, our cannon were underneath submerged for almost 300 years. To get it into a conservation lab for it to take 5-6 years to be complete, that's actually not a bad ratio.
Right.
Next, Wendy shows me the largest artifact the team is restoring. It's so big, they had to build a huge custom tank for it.
This one, I'll go on the other side, and you might want to just float back that way.
We pull off the cover to reveal an anchor.
This is the anchor that we recovered from the site last May. It's 12 feet long and about 8 feet, 9 feet wide.
After seeing some of the artifacts being preserved, Wendy shows me how they get them out of the concretions. It starts with an X-ray of the concretion so the archaeologists can see exactly what is inside them before they start doing any work. This concretion has a couple grenades in it, as well as a number of other items. The X-ray clearly shows the location of the smaller artifacts buried within the concretion.
So this is an air scribe, and I'll turn it on, and hopefully it won't hurt your ears.
Next, using an air scribe, Wendy demonstrates how the marine growth is slowly cut away from the artifacts ever so carefully. Using this technique, over time, thousands of artifacts have come out of concretions, preserved and ready to go into an exhibit. In fact, right now there are more artifacts than there is space to display them.
But this is what's to come as far going into the museum next. So hopefully you'll see some of these on display soon enough.
I head on over to the North Carolina Maritime Museum to check out the Queen Anne's Revenge exhibit, where some of the coolest finds are on display for the public to see. There, I meet up again with nautical archaeologist David Moore to learn about the exhibit.
And what we're seeing here in just this small space is literally the tip of the iceberg. We've got some 300 unique artifacts just in this one area. Of the material that's been brought up, which is approximately half the site, we've only probably seen maybe 10% of that material. And of that 10%, maybe 5% has been conserved. You know, we're looking at a fairly large volume of some very fascinating material that's going to be coming to light over the next decade to 2 decades of work in the laboratory.
These amazing artifacts now on display have not only shed light on the life of the world's most famous pirate, but also on the day-to-day happenings on a sailing ship in the 1700s. And they're here in a museum for all to see and enjoy. Through the dedicated work of these archaeologists, underwater, on the water, and in the labs, Blackbeard's ship is being slowly excavated, conserved, studied, and displayed for future generations. Even though I have only seen a small part of the process, I've come to understand and appreciate just how much work and dedication this project has taken.
Arrgh, well, I spent me a day with the Queen Anne's Revenge team. I came out looking for treasure. But what I discovered is the treasure is the ship